I mean, we're actually about the same age. I turn 58 Sunday, so I think you're around the same age. We kind of grew up listening to the same music, and a little off. I have some things I wanted to hit in terms of topics, but right before I was prepping for the interview and just listening to some playlists with your music, I was really struck by kind of the Elton John influence, and I noticed that at some point you were incorporating some Elton John stuff into your set list. So was he a an influence for you in terms of your singing and songwriting?
Of course, I think again, if you're from our generation, you're a songwriter, piano player. Certainly Billy and Elton are the two guys. Billy Joel was my first concert ever. I was 14 years old. It was the Glass Houses tour. Um, and of course, Elton, prolific Elton, his music. Um, I think both of those guys kind of show, the test of time. For every songwriter, the dream is to survive the test of time, and they've done it kind of like no other from that
Yeah.
age. But yeah, though, I kind of fancied myself as a rocker for a while there. I love the piano stuff, but out of college, I joined a band with a bunch of ex-members of Pat Benatar's band, and we were kind of doing the rock thing, and actually we're having some success. And then this little band called Nirvana came out, and that whole kind of hair rock thing ended overnight. And I went back to the piano and kind of started writing, the piano songs, which was interesting because as you know, in the late 90s and early 2000s when my songs started coming out, there was no piano on the radio. It
Yeah.
was Lilith Fair, grunge, boy bands. So I kind of enjoy the fact that, some of my tunes kind of brought the piano back on the radio like it was in the 70s and early 80s.
Well, I think you hit on a very important point that the key for any artist is to try to find something that is timeless. I mean, as you notice, I have this record collection, and there's certain records now that I put on, and I go, boy, that is 80s production. You hear it, and it
Yeah.
and it belongs to an era. Whereas there's other records that and songs, a strong enough song kind of is just the song and it keeps going. It defies whatever was going on at the time to a certain degree, because you always have to have some elements of what's happening in that era, but it still survives. And I say you fall in that category. I'm actually interviewing, of all people, this afternoon, John Ford Coley. He's kind of another one. England Dan and John Ford Coley
Yeah.
had some very, yacht rockish, somewhat
Yeah.
of their time, but they had a lot of songs that just translated really well into other generations.
No, again, I think a testament to the golden age of songwriting, which I call kind of the 70s.
Yeah.
It's not just the songwriters. We hear the classic rock, we hear Queen, we hear Zeppelin. Um, you still hear Fogerty. You hear you hear that genre. You hear some of the 80s. You hear U2 a little bit. A little bit of the 90s, a little bit of 2000s. But really, you hear the Beatles. They still have Breakfast with the Beatles, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a reason for that, and I really think it gets down to the songwriting. And because back in that age, and remember, those artists had to compete with each other, right? So they had to compete with each other for chart positions, for hits. They were putting out Elton would put out two records a year, which
Yeah.
is insane to think about these days, I guess. But yeah, I think that to stand the test of time as a songwriter, I think there's nothing more satisfying. Whether you have one or two songs like me or 30 or 40 like Elton and Billy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that with your songs too is that they can find you at a different time in life. 100 years is an example, as I'm sure you've heard a lot of times or many times, that maybe it finds you at 15, maybe it finds you at 99, but thematically it's I don't know, it's such a moving song that there's nothing about it that can't translate into different people at different times. Again, that's to me the perfect example of a song that talks about the human condition and not necessarily what was going on at the time that it was written in terms of world events.
Oh, for sure. No, I make the joke that, when I wrote the song, I was in the second verse, and now I'm in the bridge, and soon I'll
Yeah.
be in fam, and we're all in there somewhere. I now have, young people at my show singing 100 Years who were not born when I wrote it. And they're in the first verse, and we're all a little envious of them, being 15, 22. But yeah, I do think there's all certain songs kind of, I think the tone, the concept, the sentiment of the song. I think Superman also, it's not easy to be me. That's not something that has a date stamped on it, right? It's
Right.
it's something we can always wherever you are, whenever you're born, you relate to that sentiment. So I think both those songs, in a way, the lyric and concept, really have nothing to do with any moment in time. They're just kind of universal.
Yeah, and I think Superman, what's interesting about that song is that it in many ways is more relevant today in an era of social media where you have these giant, larger than life figures that are so image conscious 24/7 that deep down, like I mean, I just love the I guess it would be a juxtaposition or whatever of look at me, I'm Superman, I'm completely invulnerable, well, except to kryptonite, but deep
Right.
down inside, I'm an emotional human being that it's difficult just getting through life on some days, you know?
No, I agree with you. It is funny how the culture has changed since I wrote those songs. When Superman was a hit song, that was kind of the end of the music industry as far as having money.
Right.
In 2001, the music industry sold the most records they'd ever sold. And then, of course, streaming came and everything kind of went off the cliff. But then here comes social media, right? Social media where you can, hear a song in a store and look on your phone and know what that is and streaming. So it's been interesting to see how the songs themselves have kind of evolved through the changing of how we consume music, um, which has been interesting. But yeah, but for me, at the end of the day, a good song's a good song, and it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
matter if you write it in 1960, in 2000, in 2040. Hopefully, we won't lose our jobs to AI. I still don't think they've caught up with us yet, but yeah, I think a good song is a good song, and that's why you hear "Cats in the Cradle" today. It's just a good song that people can relate to, and I think that's why there's still kind of songs you hear every day, everywhere you go, and for me to have a couple of those, as I said, it's very humbling.
Yeah, the one I had written down that the top of my list is well, a couple of them. I mean, the riddle and if God made you, which
Mm.
but I don't know. If God made you is just such a perfect song. I mean it can be applicable to different relationships and what obviously in terms of the chorus and the concept and everything, but I just think that's just a beautiful song.
It's one of my favorite ones to play every night, just with an acoustic. Sometimes I'll have my violin player come, play it with me. Um, you know, it's weird to say as a songwriter, but I think that line, "If God made you, he's in love with me," is probably my best line.
Yeah.
Um, um, but um, but thank you for that. Yeah, and the riddle also. The riddle was interesting because Superman came very quickly. It was a gift. I basically wrote most of Superman in about an hour. It just kind of came, there it was. I didn't know what to do with it. Frankly, initially, I didn't think it was for me. And the riddle's kind of the alternate crafting of a song. It took almost a year for me to kind of lock it down. And I still have thoughts that maybe I didn't totally get it right. But it was a grind getting that song, to where it was, getting the lyric right, arranging the tune. So it's just so interesting how certain songs basically are handed to you, and other songs, it's like, running 3 marathons to get them done. But but whatever it is, I'll take it.
Well, the riddle now that was written. The riddle was written at a time, if I remember correctly, that's when your son was still young, like around what 5 or 6 years old.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see in my records when I had kids, right?
Right.
Before I had kids, I'm writing about, 65 Mustangs and, well, stuff like, but certainly the riddle, even 100 years, I don't think you write that song without two little kids sitting on your lap giving you perspective, right? Um, it's really about appreciating what you have. And certainly I Just Love You literally was a song that I co-wrote with my 3-year-old daughter. And then I think songs like World, what kind of world do you want? That's really talking about what you want for your kids, the future, right? So I think there was this transition for me in the songs, just in the tone of all the records after I had Johnny and Olivia. That I think makes sense, right? It's like your worldview changes, your kind of
Yeah.
priorities change, and then of course that's reflected in your music.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a 6-year-old granddaughter now, and the
Yeah.
last 6 years have been just every year is just a new, like, just it's different. I mean, being a dad was incredible, and I had two sons that I raised, and just to see your son become a father, it creates this whole. It's a great feeling because you look back on and you remember fondly that time when you were a parent, but then now here it is, you get to be the grandparent, so you get to enjoy all the fun without as much of the pressure. So I don't know if you've made it into grandparenthood yet, but it's a beautiful thing.
I'm have not, but both me and my wife are looking forward to it. Our kids are 23, 24, so probably won't be too long. But yeah, I can't wait for that time of my life. And yeah, becoming an empty nester and all that stuff, that's something that also it can be a little traumatizing, and a
Oh
little
yeah.
freeing, and but it's fun to kind of to write. So especially now, kind of at my age and where I am in my career, it's fun to kind of just kind of write about what matters to you. You're not chasing hits, you're not having to write 100 songs to get 10 for a record. And I'm sure if we're blessed to have a grandchild, that will be at least one song, maybe more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my son was 30. It's funny. I had kids very young, well in my early 20s, late teens and early 20s, but they waited because they were smart about it. But what are your kids' impressions in terms of looking back on some of those songs that you wrote about your experiences as being a parent? I mean, have you ever been able to have one of those, like, have they come up to you and said, maybe like, oh, wow, I really get it now? Because obviously a 3-year-old child isn't necessarily going to understand the full breadth of the emotions that you were feeling being a parent. But at this point, it must be to some level moving if they're not caught up in their own lives, which you tend to be in your early 20s.
Yeah, I think, my daughter is a little singer-songwriter. She
It's
graduated
awesome.
from college and is pursuing that. So literally when I go on the road, she'll come sing with me and she'll come sing some of these songs. She'll sit on the piano bench like she did when she was 4 years old and sing I Just Love You with me. So, for her, it's like she literally sings the songs and is
Wow.
and is kind of part of the whole thing. My son, I think, he certainly appreciates it. He's kind of mentioned in 65 Mustang and he's very supportive. And it's interesting. My son, his favorite songs are all the deep cuts,
Yeah.
songs that were never hits, songs like Devil in the Wishing Well, which I think is really cool because, those are the songs to me that are kind of really express kind of, I don't know, my creativity. So I like the fact that he really digs the deep cuts, the kind of songs that not many people know. So yeah, it's great. They certainly are, proud of dad, but it's also I'm dad. So it's
Yeah.
so the music stuff is kind of it's there, but it's secondary. But it's always fun, as I said, it's always my daughter always steals the show. She basically she steals the show. We'll actually be bringing her out on some of these dates this summer, but she's a great little songwriter, and I wouldn't be surprised if one day you're interviewing her.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah. I mean, my youngest son is a drummer, and he occasionally gets, opening act for some bigger stuff, some bands that he listened to as a kid. And he's
Yeah.
30 now, but he was into punk. So he'd opened for a band called Against All Authority. And he just thought that was the greatest thing. But I just really encouraged both of my sons to kind of find their own path musically in terms of the stuff they love. But we still have a lot of, you know, common musical love, but it's a very important bonding experience. So I'm sure you feel very blessed.
Yeah, that's wonderful. No, it's so great for your son. I remember, I actually had it was a Andre Agassi fundraiser where I was able to open for James Taylor, So
Wow.
I understand the
Yeah.
nerves and the excitement of like being able to be on the same stage of somebody that you love. So I'm sure for your son that was like, a life moment he'll never forget.
Oh, for sure. Well, his favorite band was sorry to get too far off topic,
Yeah.
but his favorite band's group called Big D and the Kids Table. And today's actually the anniversary of my mother passing 8 years ago. And he was real devastated at the time and was kind of trying to get out of a funk. And I called up the guys in Big D and said, you guys are my son's favorite band. I said, can he just play a song with you at sound check? And the guy let him come in and do a couple of songs on sound check with like his favorite band in the world. I mean, it's just those experiences are something that you just never forget. And what did it cost the guy from Big D? Nothing.
Well,
you know.
you're a good
So
daddy. You're a good daddy.
I listen to your lyrics and I know you are too. I think that's the thing that I just really well I relate to the fact that you have a heart and you question things, and I find it fascinating that you had that crossroads early on where you're playing with a guy like Rudy Sarzo, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you're playing with Rudy Sarzo and you have to take a left turn. And to me, that would have been a difficult decision to make because that whole rock star persona, the machismo, the girls, the drugs. I mean, it certainly has to have an appeal at some point, but at the end of the day, you still got to look in the mirror. You know what I mean?
Well,
And that's not to say Rudy Sarzo is a bad guy, but I mean, I've read his book. I mean, he lived a pretty crazy life in those early rock star days.
I have to say about Rudy, and for folks who don't know, he played with Ozzy, he played with Quiet Riot, he played with, when I met him, he was with Whitesnake, when Whitesnake was the top of kind of the charts. And it was like almost famous. I was just out of college, I was like 22, and I was the little kid, like wandering around, following up the elevators, but he was always so protective of me. He would say, okay, John, you can go into that room. But you can't go in there. And I never saw any of the drugs or any of that stuff. And at that time in his life, I think he'd kind of gotten out of that.
Yeah.
He was married. He's been married, I know, 40 years. He's also a unique guy. He came from Cuba, so he kind of has an understanding of kind of freedom and life that many Americans don't. And he was a great mentor to me until this day. To this day, he's a great mentor for me. And it was funny because when I met him, he was like a closet Barry Manilow fan. He loved Barry Manilow. And you'd be like, Rudy Sarzo, Barry. He just loved songs. So he would, help give me advice, play on certain records. I don't think anybody was more excited when Superman became a hit than Rudy, because he was almost like my musical father. And just a wonderful human, the nicest guy, still out there
Oh yeah.
grinding, playing shows. He did a video for my Music Matters Challenge for music in the schools. And I look back fondly on him as one of the people that really gave me the right mindset to do what I do. And it's wonderful to see him still rocking and wearing the clothes and licking the bass and being Rudy Scarzo, man.
Yeah. No, his book is probably one of my favorite rock biographies. I love reading. I like the ones that aren't just salacious, like Steven Tyler
Yeah.
wrote one that was unreadable, but it was a great one that he wrote. And I've always admired him as a musician. I got to see him with Blue Oyster Cult before he left them, and I don't know, he signed my book for me that night. I was just really happy about it. But yeah, he's one of those guys again, if he had fallen heavily into the drugs, he wouldn't be able to play the way he is because a lot of those guys were casualties. But um and I don't know, I guess it kind of goes back, full circle. Like I just it must have been on some level very daunting at the time that you made the decision to buck any kind of trends, although as you said, Nirvana had kind of destroyed the metal scene. But here you are now trying to create something that was more reminiscent of, say, the 1970s, and yet present it to a modern audience and think it was going to work. I mean, aside from Rudy, who else was saying, "Oh yeah, this is good"?
Well, my mom, there are
Yeah.
very few. I mean, I call myself a, 15-year overnight success story. You always, there's music executives. Oh, the guy's a good singer, but not a great songwriter. He was a really good songwriter, but his voice is kind of weird. And so there's always a reason for people to pass on you. I was passed on by every record company. You hear the story a million times. Superman was passed on by every record company. But for I think many people, whatever you're doing, a lot of it is just perseverance and will, and you just keep going and you keep going. And EMI Records, my first record company, closed. You just keep going. And I had a great support staff. I kind of joke about my parents, but they were very supportive of me. I was able to work at the family business. I was able to have an income and still pursue my music. My current wife, Carla, who when I met her was a music publisher, she was a champion for me. And a few other people in her at EMI Publishing became champions for me. A guy named Greg Latterman, who started Aware Records, took a chance on me after EMI Records closed. So, there's a lot of folks that their kind of belief. There was a woman named Charisse Ferget, who was a programmer at in a Las Vegas radio station, and Superman was going away. It was going down the charts. It was too different, and she kept it on the radio because she believed in it initially, and then it became number one on her radio station, and she told the world. That's how close it came. That
Wow.
it never should have happened. So that one relationship with one radio programmer is why we're talking right now. And I think that's a good example just for life about, perseverance and how close, these kind of miracles are. So
Yeah.
I don't forget about that. I remember the people that were there and supported me, and people like Charisse, who took a chance. And I try to do that for other folks. You take a chance on somebody, and I wrote, when I wrote Chances, it was tempting a big blockbuster movie, and another little another little production company said, we'd like it for our movie. And I read the script and I pulled it from big blockbuster to this little movie that nobody was going to see. They told me nobody was going to see it because in a sense, I kind of remembered being that guy,
Hmm.
the underdog, and that movie was The Blind Side. So it's like you never know. Little things are little things before they come big things, right? So I think that whole experience with Superman also kind of gave me a certain insight that I probably wouldn't have had without the 15-year grind.
Yeah, and it evidently built up some humility too. I mean, I think there's man, for the life of me, I can't remember who said it. I always think it's Uncle Cracker, but it was somebody else I interviewed, and they literally had one hit song, and there wasn't a second one. And I went ahead and asked him. I said, you're known for this one song. You're kind of, you know, categorized as a one hit wonder, but you're still able to play these 400 or 500 seat shows. And he says, well, listen, I live in Nashville, and most of the waiters and waitresses that wait on me have more musical talent than I have. And I thank God every day that I was able to get one hit on the radio, and I'm still able to do music for a living. I just thought that was I mean, that made a lot of sense to me. It shows that you still love what you do, but you also realize that it's not something that we all live in a bubble. And I think thematically you present that in a lot of your songs, to appreciate the moment, to, understand that there are setbacks, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of beauty around you.
For some reason, I ended up on, I think it's James Blunt's Twitter page the other day, and in his bio, it says, you know, shows how much one hit can do for you. And I thought that was so funny and appropriate because, yeah, there's tens of millions of songwriters around the world who would dream to be a one hit wonder. May they
Yeah.
all be one hit wonders, to have a song like that. Um, so yeah, I think part of that too with me is I had success very late relative to like most artists. I was in my late 20s, early 30s. 100 Years came out, I was like, I don't know, 32, 33. Actually more. Yeah, yeah, like 30. But so it was, I was not 19, I was not 20. And so I understood all the things that had to happen for me to have success, all the people that believed in me, all the work I put in. So I think that also, and also I have great parents, I just have great
Mm.
parents. And I do things outside of music. So for me, music wasn't like everything in my life. even though I'm very passionate about it. So I think all those things kind of gave me maybe a little grounding sense of, yeah, just be grateful for what you have, and the fact that you hear your song at the dentist chair or somebody sings it back to you. It's like that's every songwriter's dream.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw a couple more at you. Man, I've just enjoyed this so much. I'm really looking forward to the show. Just local question. I mean, you're coming to Buffalo, New York. I mean, we'll be all kind of getting pumped for football season because
Yeah.
training camp will be started, and very resilient place. But any memories in terms of Buffalo or even Niagara Falls? Because the paper I write for is the Niagara Gazette, so a lot of people have a first memory of seeing the falls or something along those lines.
Well, I just realized I'm actually wearing a Buffalo Buttes hockey hat, which is the
Nice.
Buffalo women's hockey team. I did not do that on purpose. My friend actually is one of the owners of the Buffalo Buttes, believe it or not. And yes, I have great memories of playing Buffalo. And to me, and like everybody, the falls to me are my favorite wonder of the world. I've played gigs, in Niagara. Me and my family have been there multiple times. I remember when I was a young man and I went to Toronto for the 1993 hockey series between the LA Kings and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Me and my friend John, went to the falls, and we had our first beer on the Canadian side because you could be,
Yeah, 19. Yeah, same here.
19. So I had my first Molson and sat on the falls. And I just, when they light the falls up at night, it's just gorgeous. And I always tell people this, the best barbecue restaurant I've ever been to is in Buffalo. People look at me like, what? And so great memories there, doing radio shows. Always excited to come. People are great. I know people be pumped up for football. I wish football season could start today. I'm ready. This kind of doldrums of sports is kind of bringing me down, but yeah, I'm waiting for Josh Allen to take it all the way, and but yeah, we're thrilled about it. The band's got the great band as always, just these rock stars, and the show the show is a lot of fun. So I'm just rambling, but I love Buffalo. I love the people. I love the falls. So it's always something we circle.
That's awesome. Who is your football team?
Well, since I'm from LA, we lost the Rams, right? So we didn't have a football team for 25 years. So I'm one of those people that that kind of love certain players. But now that the Rams are back, and McVay's great, and it's fun to cheer for the Rams. Also with the Chargers here, with Harbaugh coming, that's very exciting to see. But I just love the game. I love Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. It's like, how do you
Oh, no
not?
need to
Yeah,
apologize. I mean,
I
you
love
get
I've loved the game. It's just so fun. And as I said, I'm watching Hard Knocks with the Giants right now. The summer of Hard Knocks. I'm just all things like so many. I'm just addicted to the NFL, and it'll be fun to see. It's every year there's these great surprises, but there's no better fans, whether it's hockey fans, NFL fans, than Buffalo fans, and everybody, Cleveland fans and Buffalo fans. And there's a reason I'm playing both Cleveland and Buffalo on this tour.
yeah,
So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
that's awesome. And then one final question, just out of curiosity, I recorded the video and the audio. I was just going to use the audio. Do you mind if I do some edits and post the video as well on my YouTube channel?
Please do. We got the Buffalo
Okay.
Buttes. Go
Absolutely. Yeah,
Buttes.
we'll do. I just think it's such a great interview. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm just pulling quotes and then I lose, 80% of all the great conversation that we were able to have. And I think this would be very insightful for your fans and anybody, to get to
Yeah.
know you and get to know your music. So here's my final question to throw at you. Bon Jovi's always mentioned as the style of music that you could have potentially done. And obviously that kind of vocal work could be very strenuous on your vocal cords. And, Bon Jovi, it may be a genetic thing or whatever, but obviously he's really struggled with that, as have a lot of singers when they get in advanced years. Um, do you credit the fact that you were able to kind of forge your own path in terms of songwriting, performing, and become more something a little more natural to the way you sing as helping your voice kind of hold up over these years? Or do you think no matter what you sung, you were just given kind of a natural gift. I mean, your voice is pretty incredible. And as I
Oh,
listen to it, there's moments where I just go, how does he pull this off? But it appears that it doesn't it doesn't seem strained. It seems like it's just a flow.
well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, my voice, it's certainly not, a voice that can sing for Metallica. I just don't
Right.
have that voice. But I think a lot of it goes to how I trained. As a young singer, I love Freddie Mercury. I loved Steve Perry. I actually found Steve Perry's voice teacher, and I learned that many of these rock singers trained classically. They actually trained operatically. So for 7 years, I trained operatically, and it was crazy. I would be at my voice lesson, and Axl Rose would be next, and Jack White from Great White would be next. Don Dokken would be next. And so all these rock singers were training classically. It's kind of like if you can play classical piano, you can play anything. So I have this kind of classical training that helps me with my voice. And because I sing in the falsetto, it is walking a tightrope all the time. Going to sing on Good Morning America at 3 in the morning my time in a 40-degree studio can be very challenging after you haven't slept for 2 days. So my voice doesn't always, I have to be very careful when I'm on the road. I have not one, drop of alcohol. I eat well. I sometimes don't talk till sound check. So I have all these precautions. Because if I get sick, the falsetto is the first thing to go. So I try to be very cautious with my voice, and sometimes it's not all the way there. But uh, opera singers actually, believe it or not, they come into their prime in their 50s and 60s. That's when opera singers are at their strongest voice. And certainly I'm not that, but I do think if you take care of yourself, if you do your vocal exercises, if you have the right training where you don't kind of get nodes early in your career, you can sustain it. And sometimes my voice is at a 10, sometimes it's at an 8, sometimes it's a 6, but that's where the songs come in. Because
Yeah.
if people know the songs, and you're not perfect, they can make up for that. But yeah, I have a lot of experience kind of on the physiology of voice. I actually used to teach voice,
Oh, well,
so yeah, so when you kind of understand that, it helps the longevity, I think.
I think a lot of times the fans don't see the six. You do. Like you're gonna. I find
Well,
I find even with guitarists that I know, friends of mine, they'll be like, "Oh, horrible tonight." I'm like, "You what?" There was that was a great show, but again, I can think if you don't have that approach, it can ultimately hurt you as a performer too. That if you always think you're great, and I've also found, and I'll wrap up with this because again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but you obviously know more about it than I do because you've taught voice. I find sometimes artists in their later years, they'll seek voice lessons because they're starting to lose whatever they had. And then it'll create a style that's almost unrecognizable from their classic era. And it seems like the voice lessons mess them up more than if they had just kind of tried to work within what they had, even if it was maybe losing a little bit of that upper register.
yeah, I mean, and look, Elton doesn't sing up there, as much anymore, and yeah, it just there's ways you can kind of change keys and maybe just change melodies a little bit, and I certainly understand that. You see these guys in their 70s, you see Jagger out there, it's like it's incredibly inspiring to me to
Yeah.
see these folks. We saw, and some bands get new singers because guys can't just do it anymore. But yeah, I think for all of us, we do the best we can with what we have,
Yeah.
and we're grateful to be out there. And I'm so fortunate to have amazing musicians with me, whether it's the band or the string quartet. They also kind of lift me up on days that I might be struggling. But yeah, you do the best what you can. And rock and roll, it's the cliche, but rock and roll does keep you young. And
Yeah.
I still feel many days like that, 16-year-old chasing his dream. So look at Rudy, like rock and roll is keeping him rolling, and and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, he's always working. He makes it look easy, that Rudy Sar. So I tell you. Well, listen, thank you so very much. Just a wonderful opportunity to interview. I really, really appreciate it. And very much looking forward to having your show coming out to Buffalo and hopefully get a chance. What was the barbecue place, by the way? I know you mentioned it. You had the best one. Do you remember the name of it?
It was 10 years ago, so I'm going to basically go taste testing while I'm in town. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, if you can come to the show, please be our guest. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody in Buffalo next month. I'm trying to remember exactly what the date is. Um,
I don't either off the top of my head. I want to say August 6th is popping to the top of mind, but I'll look it
let's
up
see.
and
I got it right here. It's Thursday, August 8th
oh, it's
at
close.
at Electric City. So yeah, we'll be rolling up from New York the day before. But yeah, can't wait to see everybody. It'll be a lot of fun.
It is a great venue. You're really going to enjoy it. Very, very classic room. Prince played there and after
Wow.
show, and a lot of the old blues artists came through there during the day. And I don't know, I just saw Mr. Big there not too long ago. But
Oh, amazing.
it's an old room, but it's been redone. And a lot of times when you get people that go in and redo a room, they kind of compensate for some of the things that the old room lacked. And this is just a very, very music centric venue. So I know you're going to enjoy it. And a block up the road from Anchor Bar, which is the originator of the wings. We don't say buffalo wings in Buffalo. We just say wings.
We'll certainly make a stop there.
Awesome. All right, great. And thank you so much. I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll get a chance to say hi and everything like that. But I'm looking forward to the show.
Thank you, Tom. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.